A man can spend 30 years running toward the thing everybody else is running away from, and the only receipt he ever gets is printed on his own skin. That's the part nobody warns you about. You think the marks are proof. You think they're a language your family will learn to read, the way a farmer reads weather. You believe your children will look at the shine on your knuckles and the pull of the graft along your jaw and understand that those were the tolls you paid, so they'd never have to learn what smoke tastes like at 3 in the flot of lighting towns. Morning. But comfort has a strange way of rewriting history. Give a boy a soft life long enough, and he stops seeing the man who bought it. He starts seeing a flaw in the photograph. That's the hardest arithmetic I ever had to do. Friends figuring out that the same hands that carried people out of a burning building could be considered the wrong hands to raise a glass at a wedding. Before I take you into this one, do me a small favor. Drop a comment down below and tell me what town you're watching from tonight. I read every one of them, and it means more than you know to see this thing reach porches and kitchens all over the country. And if you believe that a working man's scars belong at the front of the room and not tucked behind a service door, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It keeps stories like this one moving. To explain how I ended up sitting alone at table 19 at the Ridgeway Point Club on the coldest clear Saturday of last October, you have to know about Dr. Alan Reddick. Alan is a cosmetic dentist with 3 offices between Erie and Meadville, Pennsylvania. 61 years old, silver at the temples in a way that looks arranged. He drives a white Range Rover he has professionally detailed on the first Monday of every month, and he talks about wine the way other men talk about football. He has a laugh that arrives about half a second before anything funny happens. And he has the smoothest, softest, most manicured hands I have ever seen on a grown man's hands that have never held anything heavier than a curing light. Alan is my daughter-in-law's father. He is not, and has never been, anything to my son. But somewhere in the 18 months between the engagement and the wedding, he began referring to my boy as our Marcus, and nobody at the table ever corrected him, including me. That's on my ledger, not his. My son is Marcus Delgado. He's 29, an orthodontist with a practice on Peach Street. And he was marrying Priya Reddick, a good young woman with kind eyes who I still believe deserved better from her own father than what she got. My name is Ray Delgado. I'm 63 years old. I gave 26 years to the Erie Bureau of Fire, most of it on Engine 4 out of the East Side house. And when I hung it up in 2016, I opened a little welding and fabrication shop off Buffalo Road called Delgado Iron Works. 6 employees. Gates, railings, trailer hitches, structural repair for the marinas. Honest work. The kind that leaves you tired in a way that lets you sleep. Here's the thing you'd notice about me if I sat down next to you at a diner counter. The right side of my face doesn't match the left. The skin from my jaw down into my collar is a shade too pink and too tight, shiny in the fluorescent light, and it doesn't move the way skin is supposed to move when I smile. My right ear is smaller than it ought to be. My right hand and forearm carry a graft that took 11 surgeries between 2009 and 2013, and the fingers on that hand don't fully close anymore. On the 3rd of October, 2009, a converted warehouse on Tanner Street went up with 2 men inside working a night shift. They weren't supposed to be working. The roof structure failed on us. I got both of them out. I did not get out clean. I've made my peace with all of it. I stopped flinching at mirrors around 2014. My wife Diane used to sit on the edge of the bed every single night and work silicone gel into that graft with her thumbs while the news played, and she'd say the same thing every time that she'd married a man, not a magazine. We lost her to pancreatic cancer in the spring of 2019. 11 weeks from the diagnosis. And when she went, the last person on this earth who touched my face on purpose went with her. My mistake, and I'll own it plain, because I've had a long time to think it through, was believing that sacrifice explains itself. It doesn't. Sacrifice is mute. You have to teach a child how to hear it, and I never did. I paid for everything instead. I thought that was the same thing. Marcus and Priya set the date for October 11th at the Ridgeway Point Club, out on the bay side of the peninsula, with the water on one side and old maples on the other. It's the prettiest spot in Erie County in the fall, and it is not cheap. Now, I want to be exact about the money. because money is where people lie to themselves, and I'm not going to do that here. 14 months before the wedding, we all sat down at Alan's dining room table. Alan poured something French and made a small speech. He said he had strong feelings about weddings. He said he did not believe in paying for a party. He believed in paying for a marriage. He said he was setting aside $110,000 for the down payment on the young couple's first home, and that he considered that the true gift, and that anyone who wanted to fund the party was welcome to it. I said I'd fund the party. I want you to hear how easy that was for me to say, friends, because that's the whole story right there, before anything else happens. I paid $41,000, not on a payment plan. In 3 transfers out of the money market account, Diane and I built one deposit at a time since 1994, the account we used to call the roof fund, back when we actually did need a roof. $16,200 for the ceremony lawn and the ballroom, $14,800 for dinner service for 180 guests, $5,400 for flowers, $4,600 for the band out of Pittsburgh that Priya loved. Every dollar cleared by the 15th of August. I have the confirmations in a folder in my shop office to this day. I didn't ask for my name on anything. I didn't ask to pick a song. I asked for one thing, and I only asked for it once, in the truck, at a red light on 12th Street, feeling foolish for asking at all. I asked my son if I'd be giving the welcome toast at the reception, the way my own father did at my wedding in 1987, standing up in a rented jacket in a VFW hall with a can of beer, and saying 11 words that I still remember. Marcus said, "Of course, Dad. Who else would?" That was in June. The call came on Tuesday, the 7th of October, at 2:40 in the afternoon. I was in the shop, halfway through a stair railing for a house up on the ridge. Hood flipped up, the metal still ticking as it cooled. My phone was buzzing itself in a circle on the workbench next to a jar of tips. I peeled off my left glove. I can't get the right one off quickly anymore, so I don't bother. And I answered with my ears still ringing. "Hey, bud," I said. "You calling about the shoes?" There was a pause. Not a bad connection pause. A prepared one. I've heard enough of those in my life to know the difference. When a man on the other end of a phone has practiced what he's about to say, the first breath comes out flat and even, like he's reading off an index card he's been staring at all morning. "Dad," Marcus said, "I need to talk to you about the reception program." "All right." Priya's parents hired the photography team out of Cleveland. They shoot for the regional magazines. It's a whole thing, the getting ready sequence, the first look with the parents, the receiving line, the toasts, close range, lots of faces. "Sounds expensive," I said. He laughed, and it wasn't a real laugh. Then he said, "Alan's going to do the welcome toast." Out in the yard, Kenny was running a grinder on a boat cradle. I could see the sparks jumping off the wheel in the doorway light, but I couldn't hear them anymore. It was like somebody pushed the whole world down 2 rooms away. "Alan," I said. "Dad, Marcus, I paid for the ballroom your guests are going to be standing in. It's not about money," he said it fast, "the way you say a line you've rehearsed hardest. It's about how the night reads. It's about the visuals. Alan photographs well. He's comfortable at a microphone. He knows most of the guest list." "He knows his guest list," I said. "He doesn't know mine." And then my boy said the thing. "Dad, the camera's going to be 18 inches from your face." I stood there in my shop with the hood pushed back on my head and my right hand hanging at my side, and I looked at it. The mottled color of it. The way the ring finger sits a little apart from the others like it's still deciding. "Say the rest of it," I said. "Your face doesn't photograph well," he said. "You know that. The scarring, under those lights, at that distance it's going to be in every single shot. Priya's mother had the layout done. It's going to be printed. It's going to be up on a wall in their house forever. I'm not trying to be cruel. I'm being practical. Now, friends, I want to tell you what I said next, because for a long time afterward it was the only part I was proud of. I said, "I'll wear the dress gloves. I've got a good pair from your grandfather's funeral." He didn't answer. I said, "Or I'll stand on your right, so the camera only takes the good side. I've been doing that at every family picture since 2010, and nobody's noticed yet, including you." He didn't answer. I said, There's a woman at the burn clinic at Hamot who does corrective makeup for the graft patients. I've never used it. But I'll drive over there Thursday and I'll sit in that chair for however long it takes, and I'll do it for you, and I'll never mention it again. And my son was quiet for about 4 seconds. And then he said, "Dad, it's not really the scars. There it is. That's the sentence." Every man who's ever been made small by the people he built a life for knows that sentence, even if he's never heard it out loud. It's not really the scars. It's not really the hands. It's not really the truck in the driveway or the accent or the work shirt. It's you. It's that you don't match the life we're pretending to have. Say it then, I said. You're not. He stopped, started again. Priya's family is a certain way. Alan's whole world is going to be in that room. You're going to be standing up there in a rented tux talking about Engine 4 and Mom in the VFW. And it's going to be, "Dad, I love you." But it's going to be a different wedding for 11 minutes. And I only get one of these. All right, I said. You're still coming, obviously. God, of course you're coming. We've got you at table 19. It's a good table. It's just off to the side by the service corridor, so you can slip out if the noise gets to be a lot. I know how you are with crowds since the thing. Since the thing. That's what my family calls the night I carried 2 men out of a collapsing warehouse. The thing. I didn't yell. I want you to understand that. There was nothing in me to yell with. In my experience, real pain doesn't make a man loud. It makes him cold, and it makes him very, very organized. Every fire I ever walked into, the second the heat hit my mask, my heart rate went down instead of up. Same feeling exactly. Table 19, I said. Don't make it a thing, Dad. It's one night. It's her day. Okay, son. You're okay? I'm okay. He hung up first. I stood there 4 or 5 minutes, long enough that the railing cooled all the way down and I had to reheat the joint. Teresa Vance came in around 4. Teresa's my shop foreman, 60 years old, 5'2", and she can lay a better bead than any man I've ever hired. She's also the widow of Captain Ed Vance, who was my officer on Engine 4 for 9 years and who died of the cancer that gets so many of us, 6 years after the Tanner Street fire. She took the job at my shop in 2017 because she couldn't stand her own kitchen anymore, and she stayed because she's better at it than I am. She didn't ask me what was wrong. She looked at my face, and then she looked at the phone still sitting on the bench where I'd set it down, and she got the whole thing without a word, the way people who've been in the same fires do. "Marcus," she said. "Alan's giving the toast." Teresa set down the flap disc she was carrying. She set it down slow and flat, deliberate, and it made a small, hard sound on the steel table. "Ray," she said, "you know what a scar is? It's tissue that came back stronger than what it replaced. That's all it is. That's the entire medical definition." She picked her disc back up. "Anybody who calls that ugly is telling on themselves, not on you." Then she went back to her bay, and about 10 minutes later she left a cup of black coffee on my bench without saying anything about it. That's Teresa. She doesn't do sympathy. She hands you something solid and lets you hold it. I sat in my office that night until almost 9 with the lights off in the shop and one lamp on the desk. I wasn't crying. I wasn't punching walls. Something in me was just quietly closing, like a heavy fire door easing shut on a good hinge. And while it closed, I pulled a folder out of the bottom drawer. Here's a thing about the Ridgeway Point Club that most people in Erie don't know. In 2003, the club needed all new ironwork, the entry gates, the pavilion frame, the railings down to the boat dock. They took bids. Mine came in lowest because I was a firefighter doing side work out of a 2-bay garage, and I didn't know what I was worth. Their board offered me part of the payment as a sponsored membership instead of cash, because the club was cash poor that year, and gate money is gate money. Diane thought it was the funniest thing that ever happened to us. A hose jockey with a locker at the country club. We went for Sunday breakfast, maybe twice a month for 16 years, and after she passed I kept paying the dues, $410 a quarter, because canceling it felt like admitting something. 22 years, unbroken, member in good standing, number 0447. And when Marcus and Priya picked Ridgeway Point, they didn't pick it because it was available. They picked it because I could get it. Non-members cannot book that ballroom in October. Non-members cannot book that ballroom at all. Every single thing about that wedding, the lawn, the ballroom, the vendor gate passes, the liquor service running under the club's license, the whole apparatus existed under one line on one page of the club's event agreement. Sponsoring member of record, Raymond A. Delgado, number 0447. I read the bylaws that night, the way I used to read a building's floor plan before a shift. Article 7. The sponsoring member of record is personally responsible for all charges incurred by the event and holds sole authority to designate or transfer sponsorship up until 72 hours before the event. Any non-member serving as host of record must post the non-member host fee and assume the open house account in full prior to the commencement of service. I read that paragraph maybe 9 times. Then I closed the folder and I went home and I slept better than I had in a week. Wednesday morning at 7:20, I called Douglas Prine, the club's general manager. Doug's been there 31 years. He is unfailingly polite in the way that certain men are unfailingly polite, which is to say, it is completely impossible to tell what he thinks about anything. Mr. Delgado, he said, the lawn chairs are confirmed for Saturday. We're watching the wind, but the forecast holds. Doug, I said, I need to talk about the sponsorship of record. A short pause. Is there a problem with the event? No problem, I said. Just a change of name. Now listen, if you're still with me, take 1 second and tap that like button. It's a small thing, but it tells the algorithm that stories about honest people are worth carrying, and it's the only reason these ever find the folks who need them. I want to be clear about what I did not do, because a lot of men would have done it, and I understand why. I did not cancel that wedding. I could have. I could have picked up the phone Wednesday morning and pulled the sponsorship entirely and left 180 people standing in a parking lot on the peninsula. I did not call Alan Reddick to argue with him. I did not call my son back and read him a list of everything I'd paid for since 1996. I did not stand up in the middle of the ceremony and make one single sound. That's not how a man handles it. Not a man who has spent his life being the one everybody stays calm around. What I did was give my son exactly what he asked for. All of it. Down to the last comma. Friday, at 1 in the afternoon, I drove out to Ridgeway Point in my 17 Silverado with a manila folder on the passenger seat. The maples were turning along the drive and the bay was that hard slate color it gets in October. I parked in the members' lot, walked into the office, and sat down across from Doug Prine. I'm transferring the event sponsorship, I said. My son has informed me that Dr. Alan Reddick will be serving as host of the evening. He's giving the welcome toast, he's doing the parents' portraits, and he's being introduced to the room as the family's representative. Since he's taking the role in public, I'd like the paperwork to reflect it. Effective immediately, Doug looked at me. Then he looked down at the file open on his blotter, then back up. It took him maybe 3 seconds. Mr. Delgado, he said carefully, I want to make sure you understand the consequence. Your prepaid balance of $41,000 remains applied. That's ceremony site, dinner service, florals, and the band. Those are settled, and I'll note them as settled in front of you right now. But the additions that were placed after August 15th have never been paid. They've been running on the house account under your membership. What additions? He turned the invoice around so I could read it. And here's where I found out what had been happening while I was under a boat cradle every day for 2 months. Premium open bar package, upgraded from the house selection, $6,200. A raw bar station with a chef attendant, $3,400. A second videography crew with drone coverage, $2,100. Service extension to 12:30 a.m., plus the bridal suite for 2 nights, $1,700. $13,400. Every line item requested by phone, every one of them approved by Dr. Alan Reddick. Approved by him. Charged to me. And nobody ever mentioned it, not once, in 8 weeks. He signed for these, I said. He requested them, Doug said. He is not a member. He couldn't sign for them. They defaulted to the sponsoring member of record. Not anymore, I said. I slid the notarized transfer across the desk. I'd had it done at 9 that morning at the bank on Buffalo Road, the same branch where Diane and I opened the roof fund in '94. Doug Prine read it twice. If Dr. Reddick becomes host of record, he said, he'll be required to post the non-member host fee and clear the open house account before service begins. That would be $13,400, plus the $1,100 non-member fee, $14,500, payable Saturday before 5 p.m. If it isn't cleared, the event defaults to the contracted base package: lawn, ballroom, plated dinner, band, house lighting, no premium bar, no raw bar, no drone crew, no extension past 10. That sounds exactly right, I said. And your seat, Mr. Delgado? I have you at the head table. Move me, I said. Table 19, by the service corridor. He wrote it down, and I'll tell you. For 1/2 of 1 second, something moved behind that man's professional face. 31 years of watching people behave badly at that club. All of it compressed into a single flicker, and then it was gone, and he was polite again. It will be handled precisely, he said. Saturday came in cold and blue and beautiful. The kind of October day Erie only gives you 3 or 4 of. I put on the charcoal suit I bought in 2019 for Diane's funeral. I shaved carefully around the graft, which takes me about 4 times as long as it takes you. I looked in the mirror for a while, not with self-pity, just looking. Then I drove out to the peninsula, and I got there at 4:15, and I sat down at table 19. It was a fine table, honestly, tucked behind a column, 8 feet from the swinging doors where the servers came through, close enough to the kitchen that I could hear the ticket printer. From that chair, I had a clear line of sight through the glass wall of the lobby into the corridor outside the club office. At 4:32, Alan Reddick came down that corridor in a tuxedo that fit him the way a tuxedo fits a man who owns 3 of them. Silver hair combed back, boutonniere. He was laughing at something, that half-second early laugh, with 2 men from his golf foursome. He had his hand on one of their shoulders. He looked like the proudest, richest, most photographable father in Pennsylvania. And then Doug Prine stepped out of the office with a leather folio and stood in his path. I couldn't hear one word of it, friends. Not one. It played out on the other side of that glass like an old silent movie, and I have never in my life watched anything more slowly. Doug held out the folio. Alan waved it off with a little flick of his fingers. I imagine he thought it was a seating chart or a card to sign. Doug did not lower his arm. He stood there absolutely still, and he simply kept holding it out, and after a moment Alan took it, mostly to make it stop. He opened it. He read. I watched a man's face go through 3 rooms in about 6 seconds. First the polite confusion, then a kind of sharp disbelief, chin coming up, saying something quick. Then the third thing, the one I recognized from Tanner Street. The look a man gets when he steps forward and finds out there's no floor under him. He started talking fast, both hands going, those smooth hands cutting the air. He pointed at the ballroom. He pointed back down the corridor. Doug Prine stood there with his hands folded behind his back and his mouth moving in short, flat sentences, and he did not shift his feet 1 inch the entire time. Then Alan pulled out his phone and started dialing. 11 seconds later, my phone lit up face down on the tablecloth in front of me. I turned it over. Alan Reddick. I let it go to voicemail. He called twice more. I let both of those go too. At 4:51, it was Marcus. I picked up on the second ring. Hello, son. Dad. He was in a back room somewhere, keeping his voice low, and it was shaking. What did you do? I'm at table 19, I said, by the service corridor. It's exactly where you said it'd be. Dad, the club is saying Alan's the host of record. They're saying there's $14,500 owed before 5 o'clock, or they're shutting down the bar, and the raw bar, and everything else. He's out there with 3 cards, and none of them are going through. Priya's mother is crying in the bridal suite. What did you do? I made the paperwork match the program, I said. That's not, Marcus. I kept my voice level. I've talked people out of 2nd-story windows with that voice. The host of record is the father who hosts. Alan is giving the welcome toast. Alan is standing in the parents' portraits. Alan is being presented to that room as the man of this family. It seemed dishonest to me for the man in all the photographs to be a guest on the invoice. So I fixed it. A man who isn't fit to stand at the microphone shouldn't be listed at the bottom of the contract either. He doesn't have that kind of liquid right now, Dad. His money's tied up until the house closes. And that, friends, is where I got very quiet. What house? Silence. Marcus. What house? The down payment. He's got it structured. It's in an investment vehicle. It's, son, I said. Did you ever see one document, one statement, one escrow account, one letter? Or did you just hear a nice man say a big number at a dinner table 14 months ago with a glass of wine in his hand? More silence. Long enough that I could hear the string trio starting up on the lawn. He's never given you $1, I said. Not one. He said he believed in paying for the marriage so that nobody would ever check whether he paid for anything at all. And I let him say it because I was so grateful to be allowed to be useful. Dad, please, just come down here and fix it. I can't do that, I said. My face doesn't photograph well at the payment counter. I heard him make a small sound. Dad, I paid $41,000, I said. Ceremony, dinner for 180, the flowers and the band from Pittsburgh. Every dollar of that is already spent, and it's yours, and I'd spend it again. The 14.5 is for the top shelf bar, the oysters, the helicopter camera, and the extra 2 hours, none of which I was told about, all of which your host ordered, and every bit of which he charged to my name for 8 weeks without telling me. He wanted the night. He can have the night. All of it. You're humiliating him. No, I said. I'm invoicing him. There's a difference, and every man who's ever worked for a living knows what it is. The trio outside shifted into the processional. I'm going to hang up now, son, I said. It's starting. Go get married. I mean that. I set the phone face down, and I put both hands flat on the white tablecloth, and I left them there. They got married at 5:20 on the lawn with the bay behind them, and it was beautiful, and I want to say clearly that I never wanted it to be anything else. Priya was lovely. Marcus's ears turned red the way they've turned red since he was 4. I sat in the back row on the aisle, and I clapped until my palms stung. The reception is where it came apart. Alan Reddick got $14,500 up to the counter by 4:58, a debit for what he had, then a card, then a second card, then a line of credit transfer he executed, standing at the front desk with his phone shaking in his hand. I know it went through because the ballroom lights stayed on. I also know exactly what he cut to make it work, because at 6:40 the raw bar station never appeared, and at 7:15 the bar went house brand only, and at 10:00 sharp the band packed up and the lights came on, with 200 people still standing on the floor. If you've never watched a room of comfortable people discover that the party has a budget, it is an education. There were men in that ballroom worth 8 figures standing in line to pay $11 for a well bourbon. Priya's mother spent the entire evening at the head table, with her jaw set like a bear trap, looking at her husband the way you look at a car you're about to sell. And at 7:40, Alan Reddick stood up with a microphone to give the welcome toast. I'll tell you the truth, I did not enjoy it. I thought I would. He got about 40 seconds in something about how a family isn't blood, it's who shows up, and then his voice caught. Not from emotion, from arithmetic. There is nothing on God's earth as loud as a man realizing mid-sentence that everybody in the room already knows. He got through it. The applause was polite and short, and it died about a second and a half too early, and everyone in that room heard it die. Around 9:15, Marcus came to table 19. He came down the long side of the room, past the photo booth, past his own head table, and he stood in front of me in his tuxedo with his bow tie already loosened. His eyes were red at the rims. Are you satisfied? He said. No, I said. I'm just here. You embarrassed him. In front of 200 people. In front of my wife's entire family. Alan embarrassed himself the day he took credit for a house he never framed, I said. And you embarrassed yourself, son, the minute you decided that 26 years of running into buildings could be summarized as a lighting problem. He didn't have anything for that. He stood there and worked his jaw. You could have just told me no, he said finally. About the toast. You could have said no. I did tell you, I said. I told you I'd wear gloves. I told you I'd stand on your right. I told you I'd go sit in a chair at the burn clinic and let a stranger paint my face so I could speak 11 words at my only son's wedding. Do you remember what you said back? He looked at the tablecloth. You said it wasn't really the scars. I said it gently. I want you to know that. Son, that's the only sentence from this whole year that I'm going to carry. Not the rest of it. That one. And then something happened that I didn't plan on. He looked at my hands. Really looked at them. For the first time since he was maybe 11 years old. Flat on that white linen. The graft running up the wrist. The ring finger that sits apart. The knuckles that don't quite line up anymore. He looked at them the way a person looks at a photograph of a place they used to live. For half a second I saw the little boy who used to sit on the tailgate outside the station on East Side and ask me if it hurt, and I'd say only when it rains, and he'd say then let's move to Arizona. Then he straightened up and put his shoulders back, and the mask came down over it, and he said, "Priya's waiting." "Go on," I said. "She's a good one." He went back toward the lights. I didn't stay for the cake. At 9:40, I buttoned my jacket, walked out the side door onto the gravel, and stood for a minute in that cold, clean air off the bay with the music thumping behind me. Then I got in my truck. I sat there with the engine running and looked at my hands on the wheel in the green dashboard light. Uneven, shiny in places, 2 fingers that will never fully close. Aching, the way they ache every October when the weather turns, which they will do for the rest of my life. But they were the hands of a man who has never once asked another human being to carry his weight. Every dollar in that ballroom came out of them. 2 men in this town went home to their families in 2009 because of them, and they had never, in 63 years, been used to make anybody smaller. I drove home on Route 5 with the lake black on my left the whole way. Now here's the part I think matters most, and it's the part I'd want you to hear if you only had a minute. 6 weeks later, in the first week of December, I sat down with an estate attorney downtown named Francis Okonkwo, and I moved everything. The shop, the building on Buffalo Road, the equipment, the money market account, the truck, all of it, into an irrevocable trust. Teresa Vance runs the shop and holds the operating interest for as long as she wants it, and after that it winds down, and the proceeds fund a scholarship at the burn unit at Hamot for families who can't cover the travel and the lodging during a long reconstruction, because I remember what 14 months of driving to Pittsburgh did to my wife, and nobody should do that on a firefighter's pension. Marcus is not in it. Not out of spite. I want to be understood on this. I didn't cut my son out to punish him. I cut him out because I finally believed him. He told me, clearly and honestly, what my face and my hands were worth to him in public. So I took them somewhere they'd be worth something. And I'll tell you the other thing, the thing that's harder to say. I don't think he became that man on his own. I paid for everything his whole life, because I never wanted him to feel 1 ounce of what I felt at 19, standing in a company store with $11. I taught that lesson so thoroughly, so completely, for so many years, that my boy learned the only thing left to learn from it, that there must be something shameful about the man who had to pay it. That's not entirely on him, friends. A good portion of that is on me, and I'd tell any young father listening tonight to let his kids see the bill. Let them see the tired. Hiding it doesn't protect them. It just makes you a stranger in a nice house. In March, on a Tuesday, my son pulled into the lot at Delgado Ironworks. He came in alone, in a coat that cost more than my first car, with his right hand wrapped in a wad of paper towel and blue shop tape. He'd been trying to hang a gate at their new place, and the bracket bit him. He didn't apologize. He hasn't, to this day. He just stood in the doorway and held up that hand and said, "I did this wrong. I got the first aid kit. I cleaned it out and taped it right. And then I put a pair of gloves on him, and I walked him over to the bench, and I showed him how to set a bracket so it doesn't come back at you. He was there 4 hours. We didn't talk about the wedding once. I didn't change the trust. I'm not going to. But he knows where the shop is now, and he knows the doors open on Tuesdays, and some Tuesdays he comes. That's not forgiveness. It's not a movie ending. It's just 2 men at a bench, one of them finally learning what the other one's hands are for. If somebody ever made you feel like the marks on you were something to hide your hands, your back, your face, your accent, the truck you drive, do me a favor and tell me about it down in the comments. Tell me who you are and where you're watching from tonight. And if this one sat right with you, go ahead and subscribe, because there are a lot of us out here, and we ought to be able to find each other. Take care of your hands, friends. They're the only record that lasts.